All right. Talking about one of the first W's of campsite selection, we're going to talk about water. Um, Water is an important part of campsite selection. Looking downhill, typically water is going to be low because of gravity. So we've got kind of a valley. You can see that across the landscape there in the background. And we're going to head down that way and see if we find water. All right. As you can see, we've made it downhill to that valley through a lot of thorns. Down here at the bottom of this valley in the landscape, there is running water. It's very shallow, but if I clear some leaves, I should be able to procure water pretty easily. So with that checked off the list, we will now work on finding a campsite that has wood readily available. One thing to be aware of and be attentive to when you're camping in the winter is overheating. And so I'm going to drop a couple layers, put a waypoint up in the tree so I can see where all of my gear is, and then do some scouting around for an optimal campsite. Okay, so as you can see, I have ditched my outer wool coat, still got my fingerless -33 wool gloves on, and I've got my hat on still, but I've flipped it up off my ears and off the back of my neck. I also ditched my scarf because that is 100% wool and it's very hot as well. I have set my stuff down here, and I will put up a waypoint marker with my bandana up in one of these trees nearby so that I can see it, and that will give me a way to get back to my stuff. And of course it started raining. It wasn't supposed to rain, but I don't want to leave my wool stuff, my wool layers out in the rain. So what I'm going to do is quickly set up a little shelter. This is just to keep everything dry. I've got my Helicontex poncho, got my Pathfinder poncho poles. Tac Survival makes the bags for these, and I will just quickly set this up for you.
Please take me down to the ocean. Let me go.
I said I was going to stake it out, but I may just actually tie it up to these couple of trees here. These are just the 6-foot guy lines that I've put on the 4 corners of my tarp. That's it. It's just tied to the tree there, tied to the tree here, and got everything under there while I go scout around. So I've hung a bandana here up in this tree, just right above where all of my gear is sitting. That way I can wander pretty far as long as I can still see that, and I can always get back to my gear. So I'm kind of wandering a little bit more uphill. I don't usually like to be at the very bottom of a hill because that's going to be the coldest at night, because cold air sinks and warm air rises. Looks like I've got a down tree over here with a lot of smaller branches that are ripe for the picking. So if I can find a good campsite around here, I've got plenty of wood. This area looks really good. As you can see, I've got a couple of trees so I can put up a ridge line to kind of attach my shelter to. It's pretty level right here. Another campsite selection criteria that we're going to use is widowmakers. And so I'm looking up above me, and currently I don't see anything directly above this that looks like it's dead and hung up in a tree. None of these trees appear to be dead. It's a little harder to tell that in the late fall as it is, but I think we've got our campsite. you can see what I'm looking at, because I can still see that orange bandana hanging in that tree. It's a little bit better when you're using your eyes, but do you see the orange bandana there? And then there's my poncho and the orange guy lines in the tree. So that's it right there. That's a good way to keep track of your stuff if you're out scouting. Okay, so I've basically just cleared out a space here from about here over to here that I'm going to lay my bedroll out. This is the Pathfinder bedroll sleeve. Wrapped up in there is my winter ground sleeping system. I've got this tied up with badger claw bedroll straps. Also available on the website, I believe. If not, you can reach out to Badger Claw directly, potentially. So I just lift those up, get them out of the way for now. I just roll out my bedroll right about here. Looks good. So you can see the first component of my winter system is I add a wool blanket. Otherwise, this is pretty much the same as my spring, fall, summer system. I do also sometimes roll up my oilskin tarp for more elaborate shelters that encompass me a little bit more, but it's only supposed to get down to like the low 30s, I think, tonight, so I shouldn't need any extra shelter or anything. You can sleep inside the bedroll sleeve as kind of a bivvy. I don't, because of condensation. So what I'll do is I'll wrap up in my wool blanket and I will go put kind of my feet inside of the foot box of my forester's quilt, which I'll show you next. So under here inside, we've got the Pathfinder Forester's quilt. Is an excellent addition to my bedroll, and it's always in there because it's very versatile as far as outerwear as needed. It's not waterproof or anything, but as far as for warmth in the morning, it's easy to wear because it is a poncho liner. It zips up on one side, so it's something you can make a sleeping bag with. It only zips down one side. I'll go ahead and pull it out because I will be sleeping on top of this system anyway, but it zips all the way down on one side, and then at the end it's got these drawstrings and toggles. They're shot cord, very heavy duty, thick shot cord that you draw that down, and I usually just tie it in a slippery half hitch at the end there, instead of trying to mess with those little tensioner keeper things. I don't really know what those are called, but I don't mess with those. So that's how I'll draw that down in that sleeping bag configuration. And tonight when I sleep in it, here's my hike-light pillow. Talked about that in another video. So I will leave most of it kind of unzipped, and we're use this kind of more as an over quilt than a sleeping bag. And I'll put a burrito up into my wool blanket, put my feet inside of here. So that's my sleep system for tonight. So I'm gonna take my boots off real quick and I will show you the process for wrapping up and hunkering down for a 30-degree night in the eastern woodlands. With your wool blanket, you find a corner. Queen wool blanket are nice because they are square, and for the most part, I think, at least pretty close to it, so not really too difficult to pick the right corner. So I will do that. Notice I've kept my bedroll underneath my socks so that I can put my foot down. It's completely waterproof. It's really nice like that. It gives you a place to kind of work on things. So I've got my wool blanket there. And then next bet is to ditch the coat because it's gonna have to come off before I can get in here. And I'm actually gonna have to ditch this too because I can't sleep in, I just don't sleep in long sleeves. I don't like it. Over there. I'll stuff that in that Hike-Lite pillow. Again, guys, check them out on Etsy. Keep that inside the wool blanket because that's also where my head's gonna be. And then we're always going to pull the bottom up first. That closes off our toes. And we're gonna check which corner it is. There's one corner that's gonna be higher than the other because it isn't a perfect square. And when you go corner to corner, one's not gonna be as high as the other. And so I'll find the one that's higher, the one that's lower. I think this is the lower one, will be my first wrap. Then I will tuck that underneath me on that side. And then the second wrap, I will tuck underneath me on this side. Really burritos me up. The benefit is when you flip those over, you get a secondary layer on top of your feet, on top of your toes. Oh, I forgot to take my socks off. Pretend I took my socks off. I'm not gonna take them off right now because that would drive me nuts undoing this. But I won't be sleeping in socks. And this will keep me warm. And I've done this many times in 30 degree and below weather. Then I remember how I said this is partially zipped to make kind of a foot box? And this adds a wind resistant layer. Well, it's fairly wind resistant already, but it adds a more wind resistant layer to my sleep system. And then I just do that. All snug there. I'll work my way into the folds of my wool blanket. Tuck that up and around. Get one last little bit up here. And usually I'll just sleep with that on top of me with my head out, breathing the fresh air. I'll wear like a beanie or a toboggan to sleep in. If you do get cold, one benefit of the added part up here is you can get a little bit draped over top of your head too. Works real nice if you got that. So I've got my mouth still open so I can breathe and I'm not just capturing condensation inside my sleep system. Okay, I've got some of my gear laid out so that I can get to my poncho and get my ridge line and everything set up. I'm gonna quickly set up the poncho poles again. I did put it away just because I didn't want it to snag and it's super easy to put away. Get the poles out of the tack survival bag again and then just straighten them out and they just fall together because they're all together with bungees. Shot cord in there. Everything just kind of falls into place. Too easy. Right, Andrew? All right. So this is home for tonight. As long as I don't think it's gonna rain, it's really not that bad. If you get caught in the middle of the rain, you have to deal with it. I've slept through the night soaking wet. You got that down underquilt and overquilt or wool, and you'll make it. It's not that bad. So there's a couple more W's to campsite selection that I wanted to cover real quick. We've already covered wood, water, and widow makers. The other thing to consider is wind or weather because of the effects that convection can have on you, as well as obviously if you get soaking wet in the weather. We've talked about how we've addressed that with the poncho. In case it does start raining or pouring, we can get underneath there. And then the other W that would need addressed would be wildlife. I'm in a really thick area that I don't see any obvious game trails. There's some paths fairly nearby, kind of over in that area, that are likely game trails down to the water, but you don't want to camp on an obvious trail because in the middle of the night you don't want any visitors, or you don't want to get trampled by a deer that's just kind of stomping through. It's dark. It's only like 7 o'clock, but it's about pitch black here, so can't really show you anything else. The fire, I'm gonna let it die down. I guess I'll get back on when I wake up in the morning. Just gonna sit here and relax. Can't really see any stars right now. It was pretty cloudy all day, so maybe I won't see any, but it's still a beautiful night out. Very calm. Yeah. It's better outside. Good night. It's morning. It's actually a little bit mid-morning. Had to do a few things for work via my hotspot on my phone for a couple hours this morning, but back at it out in the woods. I have dropped my tarp poncho shelter down off of the ridgeline. Had to do that last night because it did start raining probably around midnight. Fairly heavy enough that because I was out away from the shelter and not under it, I did get quite wet, but my insulation for the night was wool, and then I had the forester's quilt on top of that, like I showed you, and the forester's quilt got fairly wet. Wool stayed pretty dry for the most part, except for a couple places where it was exposed, but wool, when it's wet, still maintains about 70% of its insulative properties. So just gonna lift this up to show you. Basically, I just pulled the stakes out that were holding it up and just put it on top of me. I kind of I did prop one corner up here like this on my Duluth pack here. That's the, I'm not sure what, that's like Pathfinder pack or something by Duluth pack. It's good pack. It's very waterproof. Has a nice big flap that overlaps it. This contains my my pack basket. My Loring pack basket is inside of here completely, and it's all this wax canvas, so it's very waterproof. So I just used that outside of the shelter, prop that up like that. Kind of gave myself a diagonal because a poncho shelter is not the largest shelter, and that gave me the option to fit all the way under there, and I slept the rest of the night just fine, like that. But now I'm going to get my camp packed up, get everything put away, roll up my bedroll, and head out for the day. Okay, so that's my camp packed up. Gonna disperse the fire pit a little bit, bring the leaves back in, get the burnt stuff kind of scattered, so it's a little less intrusive on the wildlife around here, and I'm headed back to the truck. Leaving the campsite now. There's where I was sleeping last night. Looks pretty undisturbed relatively. Fire was right around there somewhere. And yeah, leave no trace. I've got no trash left behind. I try and clean up the campsite a little bit, so we'll head out. these 2 logs. There's actually one more, so it was a count of 3 logs being my kind of waypoints. And then there's a big pine tree up here that just puts me right out onto a known trail. Well, out of the woods now, and had a lot of fun. Hopefully I was able to share some knowledge, or at least let you live vicariously through my spending the night in 30 degrees.